This is Peter Helland on Citizens for Community Media, and we have a special guest that came into our community by providence. He happened to see he was on the internet looking at things, and he says, my name popped up, and...
The algorithms, your face. And it said South Bend, Notre Dame. I said, God, let me click here and see what this is,
Right, and then he ended up actually seeing the interview I did with Tom Gatewood.
Right, which was really good. Learned a lot about him and football, you and your Notre Dame past.
Right, which put me right with Notre Dame, and you are 3 years younger than me, so you started at Notre Dame in '73.
Right, September '73, August, and then '77 May.
Right,
graduated.
And I started when they still there was no girls at Notre Dame.
Yeah, we had girls. I think it was 20%, 25% at that time when I went.
Yeah. 2
dorms right across were full.
Right.
Bream and the other one.
Yep.
Yep.
And so, and then the big 2 dorms that were the high rise, which students are no longer there.
Right.
Because apparently it didn't fit with the model.
Right.
And now they're just office buildings.
Yeah. Yeah, I did make a visit while I was on campus. Got to go to my old room. I was on the floors and could visually look where I lived. Memories come back. The trees, how they grew, and the courtyard down there.
But the interesting thing is, you saw me on the internet, and then for some reason you got thinking you hadn't been here for 40-some years.
Yeah, a long time. And in the beginning, when I graduated, I didn't feel the need to come back for about 10, 20 years, because I was traveling, so busy with work, art, my businesses, different things. And then around 2000, I started getting nostalgic, nostalgia, the root of that word. And then I had a lot of marriages in my family, which interrupted coming to go to reunions. So then when this recent article came out in the Notre Dame magazine, I just decided, look, it's the end of the year. Let's just go on up and let's meet people. Let's get back to Notre Dame,
But the Notre Dame magazine, you wrote an article for it.
Yeah.
Just recently.
They commissioned me back in February to write an article bringing together, called it the heart of the artist, the heart of the geography of the place, where the place is in the panhandle of Northwest Florida, where I've been going since 2000, and it's a haven. In the winter, fall, anytime when I would go there, I would just get back in touch with my roots, get back to the essentials, do artwork, walk, hike, swim, do all kinds of things. And then every time it felt like my batteries got charged, topped up, ready to head back. So I put together an article basically talking about 20 years of going down there in one trip. It's one article, focusing on 20 years. So all these memories just popped up out of the memories that come back to you at those times, things that you remember.
But when you're at Notre Dame, you did not major in art, so this is something that developed.
Yeah. Well, when I was in childhood, I took a lot of art lessons through my mother, and she was a big influence because she had a collector's eye. She collected Verano glass. We lived in Army in Germany. Going down to Venice, Italy. She collected beautiful landscapes of Bavaria. She had this perfect eye, watercolors from Amalfi Coast. Everything was top shelf, you know what I mean? Top shelf, like a Fifth Avenue, New York gallery stuff. So I think I got her eye for colors. She loved pure colors, pure like translucency, especially turquoise was her favorite color. And I think those things were kind of embedded in me. And I had to, and so, on my art road, I got awards in high school, and I kind of got away from it for a while, and I got more into the world of information history, majored in geology, switched to international studies, graduated with that, with a minor in African studies, did a lot of literature, art history, and then when I lived in DC, I started going to galleries just constantly, and I would get obsessed by paintings. And I would try to figure out how they did the paintings, what's the process, left to right, beginning, ending. And then finally, when I got an opportunity to move to Atlanta to work as a freelance for these magazines down there as a culture writer in classical music, jazz, different countries, traveling, covering the music scene in Atlanta, Southeast, I just started my art career off and just kind of said, hey, God, let's see where this goes. If I've got talent, I'll take it all the way to the end, you know what I mean? And so the talent just kept developing and getting more and more precise, more and more detailed, just crossing thresholds I've never thought. But part of that, I think in every artist's life, you have to get to a moment where you crush your self-criticism that you've grown up your whole life with, whether it be being on a baseball team that you can't hit a home run enough or something, or you strike out. It's that criticism that's on your shoulder. You have to conquer that. You got to use your spiritual powers to say, and finally I did it, and over the period of a couple of weeks, I eliminated that self-criticism that had been bothering me my whole life.
Do you think, okay.
It was pestering me, like questioning me. So once I got that, I kept praying to the Lord, kept calling it out. It got distant. I couldn't hear anymore. And then my art career, it just like took off. And so that's what God, I was a late bloomer. God wanted me that way. He wanted me to get a great education at Notre Dame and learn a lot about the world. I worked in government in D.C., Atlanta, different places. So I learned a lot, but I wanted to turn that back in somehow to all the knowledge I've learned. I can use it in my art, kind of a mature, different levels of art.
Did anybody see that you were, you know how it is when you're younger, there might be 60 kids in your class, maybe more, but there might be one or two that really have, that are good at art.
There was a few in my high school. It was very small. There was a guy who was a beautiful drawer. He drew like a Rembrandt. And then I felt like I was an average talent at that time. But the more I put into it, the better. A lot of people started saying, hey, you've got some talent here. I said, and I kind of sloughed it off. So as time went on, I said, I'm gonna draw on that talent. I'm gonna pull out as much as I can. And so from that point on, I got commissions from the New Yorker magazine to do illustrations.
Well, how old were you then?
This was like 30 years old. I'd been painting for like since I'm 25 or something. So I got big commissions from big magazines. The New York Times wanted me to do something, the Atlantic Monthly. People saw my work and were, going after it. And then, but once I did a big project with the magazine, I would feel satisfied and want to move on to something else. Like instead of repeating it, because I didn't want to be just an illustrator where you just keep repeating illustrations. I'm always out there looking for the new thing in myself.
Now, don't you get a little...
Doing art that nobody has done before. Nobody has conceived art like this. Nobody's executed it. I kind of get a thrill that I've done something that appeals to me, that I'm happy with, that I feel some satisfaction, that I could say could be different. I mean, you could find, there's nothing totally unique in the world. We all have models. We all have reference points. We all go back to things that we really love. But at the end of the day, you just follow your heart, your intuition, and it just leads you because you're done with criticism. So art is about freedom, freeing yourself from self-criticism. Because I tell you what, there's more politics in the art world. I thought I was getting away from politics when I left D.C. No, the little tiny art world in different cities and even New York, they spend their time denigrating each other because it's like the people, they don't have the talent you do, so they come after you like.
Well, let me.
But you learn. I don't even pay attention to it. Don't have time to.
Let me interject this. Okay, so like my sister, she went to St. Mary's a couple of years, and she married a fella that was high up into education, and then they're retired. And they would take their motor home, like in Mexico, and they'd spend a couple months on the beach. And their whole thing was they hung out with all these other retired people. These are high up baby boomers. And the whole thing was to recover what you're talking about. You call it self-criticism,
or to expunge it.
Right,
expunge it.
They didn't want anybody to. The idea of somebody bragging about what they've done.
Right.
Who they were, they couldn't stand it. Basically, nobody wanted it. They wanted to start out fresh. They didn't want any of this kind of pride. A lot
of people go into art later on in life and have talent. Some have a lot of talent. They do it out of a sense of yearning for something that's missing in their life, learning for some explanation, a sense of explanation, or tapping into different things and experiencing while they're painting. Because when I get to work, I kind of know what I'm doing, but like early days, I have an image in my mind and it wouldn't be fully formed until I finished painting. And I didn't know what it would look like. I would sometimes work left top corner all the way down to the right, not even with a sketch, and paint like some kind of pottery or something that I'd seen before. And then as it's getting done, you see it and you're almost like, whoa, whoa, where did it come from? But other times I'll sketch something out, sketch something rough on the canvas, but still you got to make all those decisions. What colors I'm going to use, what sequence, how am I going to work it out, how am I going to make contrasts in there. We're going oil, we're going water-based. So there's a lot of stuff that you track through in your head while you're doing it. But the good part is you let yourself go while you're working the brush. So when you're really working, the time kind of comes to a stop, really. And then you look up and you feel tired because you've expended all this energy. And then you look and, okay, I've done like 5, like in Florida, I did 10 pieces in about 3 or 4 hours in 90 degree, 85 degree weather. I was oblivious to the heat and everything. You're just working. You're just, what do I got to do next? What I got to do on this one? Let's finish this off.
But not everybody follows that because
no, everybody's way is different.
I'm totally that's a world that I totally don't walk in. Okay, now my sister, she's an artist,
right.
And she's, but I have a friend. Well, actually, I was just out visiting my friend from kindergarten up, and he had moved to the neighboring town, and he was all athletic, totally athletic, and there's a bunch of guys that that's all they did was play sports. Now, one of the guys was totally into sports, but went into art, and it's like, we didn't know anybody like that, okay? Because you didn't think that somebody that was really interested in art was really good at, sports and being with, competing at a top
God
level.
gives people a lot of different talent sets. Like Scott Adams calls talent stacks. What are your talent stacks? How can you make the most of them? I watch them a little bit, but so my talent stack was drawing and painting, photography. I wish I would have started taking photography when I was in high school, because it's like a diary. You're keeping a diary, and what you photograph tells a lot about who you are. Because my photography, like I've gone digital on 210, I've taken 40,000 pictures since then, but I probably have about 10,000 on film, maybe 5 to 10,000. It tells you what you're focusing your mind on, what shape, what trees, canyons, people, close-up faces. It's kind of a Rorschach test, what you're interested. You build up databases with photos because you're thinking like, I could use that photo. I'll take these, like in Florida, there are these beautiful groves of red oak trees, white oak trees down on an Air Force base, which is right next to the park. And it's a vast area of just untouched nature. You're not allowed to disturb it. It's kind of like a nature preserve, even though the Air Force is running it. And they have a lot of strict rules. But you'll come across these beautiful groves of 100-year-old oak trees, intertwining and growing for probably 100-some years. So I'll go there and take photographs of those, thinking, you know what? There's a picture or two in here that I'm going to use next year. I'm going to do something with it. You see what I mean? I'll just put it away, keep it on the computer, go back, look through it. So it's a real good way. It's like the sketch pad used to be, where you're in Italy sketching or something, and you're going to come back, and you're going to do a painting of the Duomo in Milano or the Notre Dame Dome. And so you build up facsimiles, so that you can go back. For me, I go back when I'm ready to go back. When an image comes to my mind, a shape, an image, a final image, that's when it's time for me to get busy with it and execute onto that and finish those works. So keep going till I've done what I'm going to do, take a break and go back.
Is there any way, because I like to, because I'm not into art, but I am to like scripture and then Adam and Eve, So Adam was created to order the garden, right? To order it and tend it. Isn't there a connection between what Adam was created to do, to create beauty? Part of it was to order it, visualize it, look at it.
I look upon this way. A lot of my work has taken me to different parts of the world: Mexico, Morocco, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Canada, different places. Europe. And I've always drawn to churches, mosques. I love mosques. The shape of a mosque just does something for me. Either it's rounded or it's a ziggurat or it's just sitting there with the sunset behind it. It stops you in your track. This is a holy place, a place of worship. I can feel it. I feel the sensibility of it. I say, there's paintings there. I want to make a painting of that. How do I do it? You know, it's just like these things will just call out to me to be painted. So what I do, I would say, looking at as I'm sustaining beauty, I'm looking for it, but part of it is in the hurly-burly of life, we get bombarded with so much information. The artist has to retreat a bit. And I've met some jazz musician, Mal Waldron, who told me, I asked him, why do you write one tune song versus another song? He says, because it keeps coming back to me. What do you mean? It keeps coming back. The melody, I'll have it, and a year later it'll come back, and again, then it says, I need to write it out. It keeps coming back. So it's reedifying itself. It's talking to you. Come, Chris, do something with this image that you're so in love with. So I guess being a traditional Catholic, I've always loved the Catholic churches, the architecture, the sanctification of the churches, the holy space, the gilding, like the icons, the statues, even the holy cards. I love the little holy cards. They were like special. So I respond to that, and it makes me get a reverence towards it. It makes me even do a piece of work about a specific church, maybe a specific mosque, because it's a feeling of beauty encountered in life directly. You cannot hide from it. It's there. It's shouting out to you. Get on your knees. Get on your knees. There's beauty. Respect it. Capture it. Pass it on. Because artists, we're just passing it on. We're filtering it out and getting it on canvas paper. But our mission is to pass it on to you, to the public. And the good thing is, we don't have to write descriptions of it. We don't have to talk about it. We just do it. And when it's done, it's there. And it should have a presence. Like I say, my rule of painting is paintings must be alive. You know the word alive-o? You ever been to Charleston? Seafood.
Yeah,
seafood.
I was at Fort
Alive-o, it's old British. Alive-o, it's got to be alive-o. It's got to be alive. It's got to move. That's a trick. It has to move. How can a painting move? Figure that out. It has to mimic life. It's like the other day we talked about mimicking life. Mm-hmm. Okay. So back to the garden. The garden was the original depository of all that was good and sacred in the world. Everything was holy in the garden. Every plant was holy. Every being that was in there was holy. And he was to be tended and nurtured. Artists we're tending and nurturing the world. We're going around. We're trying to find out what really matters. We're trying to pull that out. We're trying to highlight that. We're trying to paint it. Like, if you know those paintings of the Rouen Cathedral by Monet. I don't know if you know those. Well, he focused on the Rouen Cathedral, and he did those most beautiful series of 10, 20 paintings of light hitting it at different times. And he was obsessed by the Rouen Cathedral. So I could be obsessed by a mosque or a church. It just happens where you just find that place. It's your place, like Florida for me. And you have to go there and work and try to pull out material from where you're at that tells you that we're living in an eternal, infinite world, but these are beautiful trees, objects, beaches. Everything is alive. We're alive. My theory is I'm expressing my reactions to the sensations all around me. These are sensations that are coming back. So I'm expressing that. I'm refining it down to a finished product. Hopefully, like jazz musicians tell me, as long as it satisfies me, I know it'll satisfy the director. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You have to satisfy yourself first as a creator. And then you leave it out there and let it go into the world. So with Adam was like in charge. He was the keeper. If you're in charge of a gallery in England, they call you the keeper of the gallery, of the museum. So he was overseeing that. So artists, look, we're basically working from, we each have our own cosmology that we have as a child. Our first instinctual reactions to sensations. I used to look at, in Germany, seeing the wind, 30 miles an hour wind blowing the grass 2 feet tall in Germany, and just transfixed by the movement of the grass, like there was a pattern and energy to it. It was springtime, or in the ocean on the North Atlantic, watching after the storms. I would stare for maybe an hour at the ocean, watching all the waves, the patterns. It was like I was seeing the energy of the world displayed right in front of my eyes, which is the power of God in all things. And as a child, I'm open to it because I'm free. As a child,
when you're a child, you
these things are indelibly printing themselves on my mind, in my heart.
Because like my dad took all kinds of photos. I think you said your dad did too.
Yeah, he was a big photographer.
And so there's a couple photos when I'm really like 6 or 7, and I used to love, and I've told you this before, I used to love worms. And because we I was fascinated with going in the ground, and then we could get the worm, and then we can go fishing and catch the fish. You know, it just seemed like a whole cycle. But my dad caught me one time just staring at this, looking at wonder at this worm, because I could just spend, unlimited time just fascinated. But you have more of that when you're young, right? It seems like you're
you're not putting restrictions. You're feeling sensations of the world that are rushing inside of you, realizations. What do you call it? Revelations. So, like, as an artist, you dig deep in yourself. What do I want to paint? What do I want to draw? Why? Because you got to go where your heart is, where it's tugging you and pulling you. You could do other work. If someone wants you to do a portrait of something, fine, that's good work. So you're always looking for what's the pull. Is that something? A lot of times, I'd wake up and say, I've heard of artists trying to paint their dreams afterwards, and it never works out. It's kind of mushy and everything. But you're almost painting something that you haven't seen yet, and you're going to bring it into life, like a baby before it's born. You conceive it, and as it shows itself, it manifests. It's there. But you didn't see it before, but you had an idea of it somehow.
But how do you connect
So that's philosophical.
How do you connect art with your Christian faith? Okay, to me, Adam is like, okay, he tended the Garden of Eden, and you go, like when I was in Europe, we would visit the gardens of the famous kings, and their gardens were like this beautiful, right? And they were proud of their gardens.
All right, I got that. I'm a spiritual person, raised traditional Catholic, a believer, especially in the Latin Mass. I prefer that. I look at the great history of church art, and it was in the service of the church to understand the mysteries of the church, of the life of Christ, apostles, saints. It's a very powerful tool, I'll say. Very powerful, because as long as those artists advanced the whole civilization of Western society through, first it was painting on wood, painting on panel, then painting on canvases, tapestries, and all the trades, all the guilds, to create a mass amount of amazing artwork that points to God, right, as logos, as the leader. So for me, okay, I say, Chris, I'm a believer, I'm a Catholic, I'm a very spiritual person, so my art is going to reflect that. It should reflect it in creating empathy through the work. Let's say I'm doing jazz musicians. I did a series of jazz musicians. I took them from the 19th century, pretty much anonymous people, and I just totally kept some things and changed others and turned them into unique people that were standing like as a metaphor for music, for silence, for musicianship, kind of like the ideal of it. So to me, Christianity was always about the ideal. What's the good? What's the sunum bonum? What is the best good? That's the basic law of government I learned at Notre Dame. What is the best good for all the people, or most of the people? The sunum bonum. That makes so much sense. I don't know where it's gone. To me, it was tattooed on me when I was at Notre Dame. It was in my heart, in my head. If you follow the sunum bonum, everybody's going to do well in the society. So when that collapses, you have chaos. So my art is not to depress people. I do political art at times when things are tragic and heartbreaking in certain areas of the world. Let's say Palestine, the West Bank, Iraq, Yemen, the horrible war in Yemen, Syria, because I know a lot of Arab artists in these areas. I traveled there. I'll sit there and I'll do 2 weeks or months to work about that situation. And it gets me out of a dark place, a dark despair. And hopefully the pieces will be hard enough hitting to like, look, this isn't a joke. This is murder. This is massive death. This is what you call, like the soldiers, American soldiers call leaving Iraq or Afghanistan is leaving a death box. But you're creating a death box by bringing in all these forces of death, mayhem, be it mercenaries or armies. And so I just, so I can go back and forth, but I want to honor my creator, and I want to find the joy. I want to live the joy, because life is so short, especially now at our ages. I don't want to go. I want to find joy, reproduce joy, make joy in the work, in the art, just because it gives the best feeling for me and for others. And if I have a difficult subject to deal with, I'll take the time to deal with it. Like I've dealt some hard political paintings in the past, and I'll sit there and I'll work a year on stuff. But then I feel like that period's over. I've got to get back to regeneration, positive, So yeah, my Christianity is an integral part.
Well, it says in the book of Sirach, shake off discouragement, shake off feeling depressed or feeling negative. Shake it off and bring yourself to to Christ and joy.
Yeah.
Right, work yourself there.
Yeah, you work yourself, because if you're in a society that's coming down all around you since, let's say, 2000, in different arenas of endless wars. I don't want to talk about all that now, but you're in that environment. There comes a point when you say, I've got to eliminate that from my mind. I've got to create my own world that honors God, honors people from all over the world, and reaches out to them and tries to reach everybody. Mass communication. I'm into having shows at a library with common folk people. I don't have to have a museum show with the cultural elites. I like to just walk the streets and take photos. South Bend, Dubai, all over the world, Marrakesh, just everywhere in the back streets. I want to see the world. I want to feel the heartbeat of it. I want to reflect it back and collect it, come out of my work. Like other people, artists are just concerned with selling and making a lot of money, or, just getting rich, or they're getting on the art covers. I mean, that's not really important in the long run.
Okay, so the old stereotype of somebody that was like Plato, like the poet, some people would say that you're escaping reality. But you would argue this is a legitimate.
I'm creating reality.
This is different.
Miles Davis said, he lives his music. Let that sink in. You listen to a Miles Davis song when you heard it, like ESP or My Funny Valentine. He said, I'm living that music. Like, I'm living the sound that it makes, the sensation it's giving you. I'm trying to live that way, because then the music will come out. So if you live that way, if you live joy, you live reaching out to people, like, let's end the war in Yemen, Syria. Yeah, let's end all that stuff. What do we got to do? We got to go over there as humanitarians? Do we have to call people? That comes into the play. But my job is to honor my gifts and keep the pipeline moving, keep it going, knock the rust off.
Okay, let's say you got a typical, we're in a kind of a poor area here in South Bend. We're not in a rich area, and you got common people. And people are married. They have tension in their marriage. Some people blow it off by watching sports and doing that. And you're saying this is more creative. This is more productive.
Yes.
When you channel yourself in something like this, it's more life-giving.
Right.
Because a lot of things people channel, they may go to the bar to drink, right? Or they may pursue things that...
Because we're in a world of sensation, constantly in sensation, just like you were as a child with the earthworms. Me looking at the ocean, we were on the SS America, and I'd be just watching the green emerald swells come together in this huge foam and go down. And I used to imagine myself, what would it be like to be out there in a little boat? And that's why I'm obsessed with books about people that sail in difficult situations. So basically, right, these moments come back in your life over and over again of the things that give you the most joy or the most affirmation in your true character. So the artwork, the great thing about the artwork is I can use my entire life's history. I can go back to when I was in Germany and as a child. I could go back to the old South that we lived on the army bases. I could go back to Augusta, Georgia, Notre Dame. I could go back in my mind to certain places because my Giancarlo Menotti, the great opera director of Spoleto, I interviewed him, and I said to him, I gave him a compliment, and then he said, that's because I have a good memory. He said, the best artists have the best memories. And then that stuck in my mind, and I realized that certain things happen in my life where I knew I was going to remember it at the time, so it gets doubly printed in your brain. And then like a conversation, an encounter. So I get to use my memory. I get to try to go back, and the memories change over time. And it's almost like there's a whole book there, the book of life, the Arab call, the book of life. Each one has a book of life, all right? In the Arab world, or the Islamic world, they say the book of life is written. Your end is already written. The Americans would say, no, we have free will. It's not written yet. I can change the final chapter.
Oh, right.
So whatever happens, it is written. I don't go by that. But they do believe that your life is a book. Like, look about illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages. Life is a book, beginning, middle, end. So your memory is a book that you can go back to. Like Faulkner said, there is no past. The past is here. It's now. It'll always be. And the present is here, and the future is here. It's all kind of... So that gets back to being an artist, using memory, using the past, using what's happening now to let information in. And what do? You have to react to that. You have to create to that. That's where my tensions are coming from.
Well, especially if you attach that to the notions of heaven and earth will pass away.
It's a mystery of life, and we're trying to leave some breadcrumbs along the way. But we're leaving breadcrumbs for other people to follow after us.
Now, when I was over my sophomore year, I was over in Innsbruck.
Solving the mystery of life. Everyone tries to solve it in their own way. So we're leaving breadcrumbs. I'm leaving paintings behind.
But if you take a course, like I took a course in Western art, over when I was in Innsbruck. I don't think anything really happened to me. I remember taking it, but back up till recently, all art was Christian in Europe, right?
That's true.
Wasn't
until
pretty much that's
until the Rococo 1700s.
Right, but for the longest time, everybody
worshipped itself, worshipped the wealth of the king of the state.
It changed.
And so it was called the Rococo age.
Yeah,
where it just was ornament upon ornament upon ornament. And then your royal families built their houses, their palaces.
And then you go up to Picasso, who was not a Christian at all, right?
Well, he was a Catholic, baptized.
Was he? Yeah. Okay, but I thought he was like a communist, or he was like...
he was a communist too.
I'm just saying...
He was the most famous communist in the world.
He was?
Yeah. He was like their artist, their spokesman. His little dove of peace. He'd make posters and people buy. Yeah, he donated his... But
usually people think communism is opposed to Christianity. So... Well,
we're talking politics now.
Okay.
So, I mean...
True, we're
talking art or politics.
But art is an expression of a worldview to a degree.
Art can be used as agitprop. It's used for the Nazis, the Soviet Union.
Well, Hitler was
whoever wants to marshal people can use art in the favor of that. Yeah, that's true.
Well, Hitler was fascinated with art.
Or social justice. Yeah, you can get artists to do all this social justice, murals everywhere. Yeah, whatever you pay them, they'll do.
And do you think a painting expresses a worldview or not necessarily?
That stuff's worthless. Agitprop is worthless. It's worthless.
Worthless.
You know what worthless is?
Worthless?
Less than zero. Except it's a style. And as a historian of art, a lot of people like to study those periods because usually the artists that do the agitprop are very talented and well-meaning, but they have to get along, otherwise they might starve to death. So they make a portrait of Stalin over and over again, and they survive. And they have a family, and they eat, and they live, and they die. And then you look back at the portraits and you realize, hey, what other choice did he have? He would be starving to death. So, but there's great talent that did that. Some of them, and then there's very minuscule talent that's just a flavor of the day. Whatever the new flavor of the day for social justice is, you'll find someone to do some kind of representation of it. You know, with
But you're saying
happy child colors. They're always trying to make it primary and kind of almost infantile.
But you're saying
but it's worthless. It's
that's
not
worthless,
even worth
right.
your time. But there's some great artists that had to work for the state, like in Yugoslavia, all the countries that did all the statues. Yeah, they're great craftsmen. They did beautiful work. They made great paintings. It was in the service of the socialist state.
You could say our schools are government schools, and so couldn't you argue based on that people may not think they're working for the state, but in a way they are?
Whatever the state promotes, the liberal arts in those schools will promote it. Whatever the agenda is. If you're
Don't you see a lot of that happening?
If you're in a Catholic school, you'll have Catholic values. If you're in a public school, you'll have whatever is the most current, popular, social justice type of feel-good philosophy,
but
which
even,
is an infantile.
Even in the Catholic school, the state can come into the Catholic school.
Well, I can't worry about that. That's not about my.
Okay.
Politics are always around, everywhere. Sometimes you see your best painters that they get away from it. They become like hermits. Maybe they suffer for it. Van Gogh, he wasn't into propaganda. He was on fire for life. It's a cliche, but he just went. He had enough food, enough paint, enough brushes. He just made these masterworks. Nobody was telling him to do it. I think God was calling him to do it because he's very religious. His letters to his brother Tio. My sister gave me a copy of that when I just moved to D.C. It had just come out, this paperback. It was the most, because my sister was a very spiritual person like my mother, Kathleen Kuhl, Mary Kathleen. And we both loved that book because it was just all about joy of your early 20s, discovering the power and beauty of God, and just being in love with it, and then looking at the world and just wanting to run out there, grab a tree, jump in a lake, go swimming, feel the sensations of life. So it was like, this was a modern artist, one of the best modern artists there is, and he's crying out to God every day. He can't help himself. Okay, so if you're an atheist, you can't hide the fact that he was loving God every minute of the day, and he was only painting for that reason, because he couldn't do it. He couldn't do anything
That's where
else.
his joy came from.
That's where his wellspring.
God.
That was his wellspring, but the art as well. Because he's a very disciplined person, very disciplined in his drawing. If you look at his drawings, you'll be shocked at how beautiful and masterful his drawing became in 10 years or 20 years. And most of his work he did in 10 years, the last 10 years.
Well, Adam, I keep going back to Adam because I don't know where else to go, to figure out, okay, where did art come from? Well, God created us. He created Adam.
Just like music, where does music come from? Or the drive to make music?
Well, a lot of music in God's kingdom. I mean,
right.
it's just, and music is.
I'm not a Western history major to know. I know the basic movements of Western art. The Rococo, and then Enlightenment, and then the Dark Ages, and then the Renaissance, and then I guess the modern era started around 1870s. Post-Impressionism. Now it's post-impressionism. Salon art before that was a very highly technical work of for really wealthy patrons that weren't religious patrons anymore. They were more like business entrepreneurs or governors or senators or emperors, whatever. And then now it's kind of from 1900 it's really a mishmash because there's a lot of great modern artists that I loved, Americans, Georgia O'Keeffe, Stuart Davis, all these great painters that just Fairfield Porter that let their creativity move it around, get it moving, put some life into the painting. And then you have so many great Charles Butterfield from Buffalo. So many great painters in American history, the ones that called them the Ashcan School that did the down and out, depressed people of the 1880s, 90s. And then you had the Hudson School before that. So America has produced a lot of great artists. So now we're, to sum up art history, we're in kind of a post-conceptual art stage where pretty much everything is globalized now. The art schools are the same any country you go, pretty much. You're going to get the same message.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's bad. I think it's homogenous. World. I think the globalism is destroying local cultures. The local cultures that got me excited about discovering small neighborhoods, a shrine, a church, a mosque, people just sitting, talking. You could sit down, you could just blend in, you could talk, you could learn, versus technology, the intrusion of technology where everybody knows everything everywhere in the world. Like, I could walk through a Moroccan village and no one has ever called to the United States or seen the United States or known anybody that's been to the United States, and I could tell them everything they want to know about it. But no, now that, now they have artificial intelligence, which they're tracking everything. So they're getting this artificial intelligence. So a true artist that is staying independent, he's eternally opposed to artificial intelligence. To me, artificial intelligence is the hammer fist of destruction and censorship and dullness. And it's dull, it's a lie.
I mean, okay, right now.
You don't need artificial intelligence.
1984.
Artists, I divorce myself from it. I don't look at it. I don't spend my time on the cell phone. I want to be away from technology. I want to go get what I want. I want to listen to classical music or jazz on a station or on music. I want to go look at some books, read books. I want to choose the culture that's appropriate for me, that nourishes me. So I don't just let it, so I'm thinking you have to control what comes in, control.
So you're really fighting the 1984 movement, where everything, people are scared to death that we're going to 1984.
Yeah. Everybody
but you see patterns of it.
Everybody thought it would be great as an artist because people could see your work right away. But now I'm beginning to think that artificial intelligence plans to take over even artists' jobs and make their own paintings for them and lobotomize the artist at the end.
But what are some things that are going in the direction of artificial intelligence? You're talking about
Well, I've heard about programs. I mean, you could do programs on computer where you draw and paint, but I stay off of that because I want the tactical feel of my fingers on paint, with pencil, on canvas. I want to hear sounds, noises. I don't need a screen. I don't want a screen. A screen to me is a barrier to reality. So I'm going to be straight up forward as I can. Everybody wants to try to think it's labor saving. I don't want to save labor. I want to sweat it out. I don't want to save labor. I mean, word processing is nice.
I mean, does this translate, okay, so what you're saying, some people may express kind of the philosophy you're saying by saying, I want to homeschool my kids. Is there any connection? I mean, when you take this, does it kind of express itself in other areas?
I preach individuality and liberty. So do what you think you should do for your own life. And that, the quality of life is not just your aesthetics, your information, your music you take in, the information for facts and data, how you make your decisions every day about what is reality. It's aesthetic. It's the power of the aesthetics. It's the power of your religion, your spirituality. Plus, if you do have a family, then you have to consider them and what they want and what they need and what's good for them. The sunum bunum, what is the good for all? The good for all is to be valued, to be treasured, to be useful, to have our art labor to be useful, to be a blessing for people. So, I'm not looking for some magic bullet, like on high tech or something. I don't need it because I just think that everybody jumps into these movements thinking they're going to benefit. But I think that are you really going to benefit in the long run? I mean, just have to keep things in balance, common sense balance. Can
you name a couple artists? And I'm not in the art world, okay? Mm-hmm. So can you name a couple artists that might reflect the direction that you go in? Is there anybody that
I'm kind of a throwback. I would say in my early career, I very much identified with certain painters like Pierre Bernard, Van Gogh a little bit, and all his circles, because they created such vivid life, character, landscape is like, how the heck am I going to do this? How can I compete with it? But then you find your way and you look at other styles, and then you start to find out what you're going to do, and you play at it, and you develop your personality, your styles. Okay, and then you realize that's me, and I think that's me. But it's a lot of influences. It's like, like when you make a recipe, you're putting a lot in there, so you're getting out what you're putting in. So as far as contemporary artists now, before in the 90s, I visited and I studied great painters and I learned from them. That was the best thing I could do, where I could go to their studio, watch, listen, chat. I learned more there than reading books, let's say, on other artists. So, but now I don't really consider other painters. I like to look at artwork when I go see it, but I'm just too busy kind of trying to get my own ideas down on paper and canvas. So I've kind of stayed away from gallery going too much. I mean, I like to get out and mix and share and talk it up. And there's always good things going on. So that's a good idea to stay involved in your artistic community, wherever you might be. Like, there might be other artists watching this program. And wherever you are, you could start a little program in your town, because it's really about getting people out, sharing about your life, your experiences, your families, your grandparents. There's all this history, all this book of each of us is a book. Behind that's another book. Hey, come on, man, let's open up these books. Let's go through it exhaustively. Who are we? What are we doing? What do we want? Let's get her done. That's why you're driven to put it all into images, photos, drawings, or paintings, because these are my diaries.
We have about 13 minutes left, and I see you brought some things with you. You got your card, but these right here are an expression of your art. So you're expressing yourself here,
right? But
this is the ultimate expression, because this is your artwork.
Final result.
Yeah.
Final results.
So
which
kind of explain why you think that's good artwork. Okay. I mean,
well, I don't judge it, but I just make it.
Okay. But it's an expression of an attempt.
Right.
Okay.
First of all, let me show you this image. This is from 2014.088. It's called Wakahuta. It's a Seminal Indian name. It was a village in Florida where they had cattle and such, Central Florida. It was on the map. It's still on the map. I don't know who lives there now. Maybe but it was a Seminole town. So this was a Seminole piece I did back in 2014, where this was a very difficult piece to finish. It took me months. I did the underpainting. I almost painted over it. I got discouraged. I didn't know where I was going to go with it. Then I just sat down and things just came to me, and I started working, and it finished itself, like in an hour or two, And then I looked back at it, I said, that's what I wanted. Thank God I got it. I did not see this painting in my mind before I started it. It's got like 4 or 5 different layers, which is fun. It's fun. That's the joy. Going out there on the high board when you're 8 years old, 7, and knowing you have to jump off 30 feet into the water and you can't go back. You have to go. You got to just go and either do a little header in, and then you want to go back and do more. So this was because sometimes when you do a piece like this, it gives you a feeling like when you're stuck, and then you get out of it, like a detour. Like there's a great movie called Detour in the 40s. I love film noir, 40s, 50s detective movies. But yeah, you get into it, you know what you want to do, and you're trying to get there, and then finally you'd say, well, if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to blow it up. That means you get the can of red paint out, and you dump a can of red paint. That's what modern art says. If the painting has gone so downhill, there's nothing to be done, you go get the can of red paint and you dump it over it. Oh, I didn't do that. Or the very important art lesson I had was, after a certain point with the painting, you have to come to a decision on it. Don't be afraid to white it out, to gesso it out, 2 or 3 gessos, and start over. You got a brand new canvas. Start it over if you have to. I did that many times early on.
But you
Not
mentioned
now.
You mentioned jumping off the high dive
Yeah.
at age 8. How much of art in your mind has something to do with Jesus saying you got to become like a child to enter in the kingdom of heaven? Is there any of that in trying to put your expressions on here?
Well, let me show you a few more of these pieces. Okay, this was 214, and it had to do with a series I was working on in my travels to the southern eastern states called Searching for Red Town. Here's a DVD I have. Now, Red Town means Creek Indian town of the 1800s, and basically I was searching all over the southeast on the way down to Florida to do my artwork, searching for any remnants of Creek towns or Creek ruins, so it became kind of a journey pushing me down along back road highways looking for old historical sites. So part of it was the journey in itself to search for these Garden of Eden type events of like the perfection of man, going back to the nature of the 1800s. Not much technology, right? Mm-mm. Living off the land. The land is unspoiled. It's God as He gave it to us. We haven't taken all the trees down. The natives are taking care of it. It's like this early days in America, like this kind of paradise existence. If you had a farm, or if you were, and you had Indians living over there, and you didn't bother each other, you worked together, you traded. To me, it was like a very paradisical American experience, that you could have European education and farming, but you could also have Native Americans living in their way and using each, back and forth. So part of this was like a search in the Southeast was all Native Americans all over every state. And now I don't think there's any very tiny reservations. In Alabama, there's 1 or 2, one in Georgia, in a very, very tiny compared to out west. So that was the history of this piece, Wakahuta. There's like hundreds of pieces in this series. So bringing us up to date, these 3 pieces, this first one, these have been painted in South Bend, in the Rum Village area, which I put initials on where I paint something so I can remember it. So this is called African Gourd series, and I did an African gourd in the 1990. I saw a beautiful African film where a little boy and his sister carried these little gourds around their shoulders with a string, and they covered 10 miles a day of Sahel vegetation landscape, and they lived. This was life or death. This gourd was their life. It was their connection. Without this, they die. Imagine that. That thing dropped or broke. One or the other might die. It's just, to me, like, we walk around every day. I mean, that's your survival package. It's that little gourd. And that's all they had was that gourd. To me, that was close to godliness. It was so simple. It was like Adam in a Garden of Eden. Okay, here we go. Native Americans, Garden of Eden. These 2 little beautiful children, they're probably never acted in a movie before. The movie was I can't even remember the title, but I would like to find it. But I did an oil painting of that gourd, of my interpretation of that gourd. And my sister, Kathleen, always used to say, "Chris." I'd say, "Yeah, Kathy." And she'd look at that painting like it was at my mother's house. She wanted it. And she goes, "Yeah, come here, look at the painting." And she said, "There's something about that painting, isn't there?" I said, "Kathy, there's something about the painting. We couldn't even get there. It just was a deep thing." So this is a totally different approach to it, with water-based paint, just wide open, just playing with colors and contrapositions. So this was number 12 of this year, just December 8th. And
so how long did it take you to do that?
Oh, it takes a good part of a day to finish one.
Okay.
I work on about 4 at once, but it takes, this one is number 13, it follows it. So I'll hold up number 12 and 13. And this one over here is a little bit different from this, if you could tell. What I did is, this one I more worked this one out mathematically in certain ways on this side. But this one, I had to, that in the middle part is wet on wet. When it's wet on wet, you only have a few minutes to do what you got to do, and it sets up. Oil paint can stay wet on wet for hours, and you can go back in anytime you want. You can put this shade, that shade. With acrylic paints, they're going to dry, but you got a very few minutes to get it done. So what I did is I just used this. It was using this as like just experimentation, and then I just started working it because I knew I had 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5, and I just finished it up. So it was like a race. This was like a racetrack doing this one, because I had to run back and forth between a room and this one, because I knew if I wait 10 more seconds, I got to get the effect. I want my goal, like I told you, the painting's alive, moving. All right. So there's ways to do it. So hopefully you do it. And if it works, it kind of makes you happy. Okay, so let's get to the last one here. This one is the newest one. I haven't even labeled it yet on the back. So this is an African gourd. Now these are totally different from that oil painting I did. If you saw that oil painting at African gourd, it would look like an old master's painting with a dark brown Rembrandt with translucent colors. But this was just the shape of it. And I got this idea back a few months ago when I was in Atlanta, and then when I got here, I decided to pick up and do these paintings while I was in South Bend too. So I hope that explains that. So I let others judge. I'm looking at the counterplay, the counterpoint of the colors: complementary, flat, metallic, satin, gloss versus satin. A lot of intuition goes in there, but you want movement. You want a feeling of dynamism. So I hope they work. I think they will look beautifully framed up.
Now, is that an expression? Is that an expression of the time period we live in? And if you did that 500 years ago and explained yourself,
that would be more like this. Someone might think this is like Aboriginal art, or it might be simplified because it's block colors. You know, because I'm looking, like, if you look at the background, there's motion in the background. Look at the back color, the red. Mm-hmm. All right, that was on purpose. I didn't want to block it in. I wanted the brush strokes to show the energy. So in the colors, they're all adding up to kind of a symmetry of effect. It could be psychological. This could work in psychological levels. You're dealing with a lot of stuff at one time. The paintings, how the colors react to each other, how they're going to react when you're looking. You know, complementary, opposition colors. They set up a lot of different frequencies in energy. So that's what I'm working on. You don't want to repeat. You don't want to have a blue, 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 blue. I've done some blue, different colors of just blue. Yeah, so that's the great thing, that you can go off on these binges to satisfy your unquenchable thirst.
Does this reflect South Bend at all? Does this reflect your trip to Notre Dame at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I said, sorry about that. Yeah, these were done in South Bend and Rum Village area.
And it's a reflection of your time here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very proud. Like one day I was working on all 4, got them all completed. It was like the best day I've had. I mean, you know, so yeah, it was very productive. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, very good.
Did you do any from Notre Dame? I mean, this is South Bend.
I'm gonna do a series on a certain landmark there.
Okay.
And I've done enough photos, but I think I'll just have to draw it out and play with it, and then start painting it.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll might be in a similar style.
We have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Hopefully we can have another. We've been talking to another guest, and maybe you two can come back on, and we can continue this just a little bit more. Oh,
that would be exciting. I look forward. I want to thank you, Peter, that I discovered you in 2016, I think it was, and you opened the door back up to Notre Dame for me, because you covered a lot of topics, and I always had a heart for Notre Dame, like what's going on there. Right. I love the people are loyal to Notre Dame. We should be loyal to each other, and I learned a lot about it. And then I found out about you and all the work you did in your work in theology, which is your master's work.
Yeah.
And you're doing a lot of community work, and so it's just exciting to be here. And it's kind of even that overused word, surreal, that we even did this interview. Okay, we're wrapping it up, and we'll be back one more time, hopefully. So this is Christopher Kuhl, Peter HELLAND on Citizens for Community Media.